Okay, so yeah, I'm Jutta Burger. I'm from California Invasive Plant Council, and I have the pleasure of giving the final talk, I guess, here to sort of move up from the ground level a little bit. And I'm not going to be talking about too much on the groundwork right now, but more about what I have here on the outline, which is, first of all, where we're at now, sort of status, a little bit synthesized from some what we've heard today, some policy updates at the state level, some things about current statewide funding and support, some highlights on collaborations, and we've heard some really good examples today. Looking forward also, then the next thing is biological control and other progress being made, and those are the contributions we've heard of a couple times already from Patrick Moran. And sprinkled in the middle in there, I of course have to touch on complications as well. Yes. So first of all, where are we now? So we are in a much better situation than we were at 2004 and even in 2013, when things really started taking off and we had the first research really going on this. We know much more about the biology thanks to the research going on in Ingrid Parker's and other people's labs, about the adaptive capacity. We heard from Nikki some really interesting information about possible phenology shifts, more about the also that had to do with the potential distribution changes, and also a lot about effective management techniques for Stinkwort. We've we know, I know locally, and we've heard from several groups across the state, many groups are mapping the species. So we have a pretty good idea of where it occurs, and many groups are removing it. Lots of volunteer groups as well that you never really hear about doing a really good local work. And lastly, you know, we have multiple larger scale coordinated programs going on as well across the state. So this is that ever-present CalFlora map of the scary distribution of Stinkwort that will be branded in your brain for a while to come, probably. So first off, statewide funding and support. So Ingrid introduced the weed management areas, WMAs, and sort of their origins, as well as a little bit of their history. So as we had heard, they were kind of defunded for a while. And unfortunately, because of defunding around 2010, 2011, they also, some of them got disbanded, some of them stayed strong and held together during those hard times. Well, as of 2019, they have been partially funded again through CDFA. So it's a little bit of choppy funding, but there is at least some funding coming down from the state to some of the weed management areas. So they got, I think, a plug of money in 2019 that they handed out to WMAs in 2020 and 2021 around, and that was both to ag commissioners' offices and to RCD-driven WMAs. Then the CDFA was also able to use unclaimed gas tax money, but that went directly to ag commissioners' offices. And that's been really helpful especially at addressing early detection species. So there are those A-listed weeds from CDFA. Now, Stinkwort is not an A-listed weed, but the money is also available for other noxious weeds as well. So some programs have been able to use that funding. Well, 2022, the Biodiversity Initiative included this great $10 million plug to the state noxious weed management account. You might wonder, where is this money that we speak of, this $10 million? It's still in the bank. I hope it's been getting interest because it has not been spent at all yet, which is maybe, I don't know, bad thing, good thing. We know it's still there. And about $6 million of that is earmarked for WMAs directly. That would be, to our knowledge, both, you know, either whether they're RCD or ag commissioner offices. It is the goal, based on what CDFA says, is that they are trying to get those RFPs, requests for proposals, out by early July. I don't know whether that will be a reality. It would be great if it were. So it does require an advisory committee to be set up, and they have to get all of the criteria for these requests for proposal out and together and agreed upon. So that's why it's taking a while. And then there's $2 million for oversight and $2 million for research and mapping, which is also that those specifics have to be provided. And then other good news is that CDFA hired a new weed program coordinator to help David Kratville, some of you folks might know, Trevor Fox. So he will be doing some of the pest proposals for new species, and is also there at the state level to help folks. So, all right. This is our best guess of what the criteria will be for funding. We don't know yet because they haven't been, those stipulations have not been finalized yet. So if it's anything like past grants, a WMA asking for money has to, and I'm assuming I don't need to make the connection between money here and Stinkwort probably. I'm assuming you guys are all got that together here. That a WMA must have an MOU between all the stakeholders in the area. And I think Amelia mentioned in her talk, the great value of that when you have these partners already signed on with a memorandum of understanding, an MOU. A WMA must have a strategic plan. The target that money is being asked for should be listed by CDFA as a noxious weed or in the queue for listing. The entities requesting funding are WMA leads, and then again, that's Resource Conservation District or Ag Commissioner's Office. And a preference is probably going to be given for species that are an early detection priority. So it might be a little bit more difficult to get funding, but we don't know that for sure for places that are in ground zero here, like this county, Santa Clara. Whoa. Okay, so I was mentioning regional priority, which that might be one of the criteria that is going to be used for giving funding. We did a work, and by we I do not mean me, I mean Doug Johnson and Nikki Valentine, my colleagues. They put together information from all the Ag Commissioner's offices and as many of the resource conservation districts that they could, that were associated with WMAs, and even those that weren't, to get what are their priority species that they're looking at. And we compiled all of that information together. And the red outlined areas here are the highlighted weed management areas that have had listed Stinkwort. So that's already going to be helpful because those areas might be able to be a step ahead with getting funding for Stinkwort, if that's what you're looking for. So the only one, however, that is specifically has included Stinkwort as an early detection target is the North Central region up in the North Central part of California, and with Shasta County Ag Commissioner's Office targeting it specifically for early detection. And that's because it's very low density there. Only 3% of the USGS quadrangles have that. So that's what those percentages mean, how many USGS quads have documented Stinkwort in them. And when you get higher and higher, it gets to like, oh, that's less and less of an early detection candidate, really. That link on the bottom is to a PDF of the summaries for all of the regions that we have. Okay, so moving on. All right, I was going to stick in those complications somewhere because I think it's important to talk about that before we really talk about how we can overcome them. But a lot of that's already been summarized, I think, in all the great talks today. One of them, which I'm sort of implying a little bit right now, is the unpredictable and inconsistent funding and political support. So very difficult. We saw great success if you can hammer that species, get 100% removal 2-3 years in a row. Wow, that's amazing success that you can have. If you don't, if you lay off, then you get that resurgence that comes right, that'll get you right back to your starting point. We heard about management practices being difficult to focus for just stinkwort. We heard about the movement of seed through gravel, other things, and through equipment. We heard through from Devin about favorable conditions after wildfire. We heard about some challenges with herbicide use and restraints and constraints on that. And then from Nikki about the greater potential ecological niche if we get new introductions in here. So I wanted to specifically target bring to your attention some of the materials that Amelia was talking about at our website. These are several links that give you documents to provide sort of a jump start on getting weed-free materials if you're a land manager and you need to talk to quarries or you need to get some kind of protocol set in your for your organization. And I think that these slides are going to be posted later as well, so you can get those. Don't worry about knocking them down. Success stories, quickly. I'm already at the 5-minute mark. One TAM, of course, picture, poster child of EDRR. And, I think that Rachel gave such a great review. I don't have to say too much about that. David Greenberger is thankfully still there at One TAM, and Rachel is participating in that group still. So we have really strong representation, but it's this great collaborate. And these are examples of great collaborations, interorganizational collaborations that really provide strength. Why do they provide strength? These are some examples from, I think, One TAM, the One TAM collaborative, of what provides them strength on a collaborative level. And they really help to be guidance for other groups as well. They're really sort of a general things. Consensus, you want to have a shared goal. Shared responsibility, you want to be able to fill in when you have somebody has a shortfall, somebody else fills in for them. Annual review and goal setting, so you know exactly what you're going after. And Dawn gave Dawn's program's also poster child. So the goal setting, very exact goal setting. The single shared data platform, CalFlora, we are so lucky in California to have CalFlora as a default data sharing program. Regular check-ins. One TAM is they manage to do this every 2 weeks. They check in about their EDRR species. That's just super. And regular training, so the new staff coming in or get up to that same level that they need to be up to be out in the field and effective quickly. Another partner team that's taking the plunge. They're probably seeking guidance from other groups, but I just want to mention them. It's another group of multiple landowners, land managers, pulling together and sharing early detection priority lists and sharing goals. And so they have 10 populations in Orange County, and that is their one of their top priority species to be working on. So other ways, we've gone through these other ways over the course of the day. And I think some of them I have to be a little bit more hedgy on, but we know that incorporating prevention is good. We know that time mowing is an opportunity, but it's super difficult. We know that strategic herbicide can be very helpful especially when you have labor shortages. Increased competition, these are more iffy, like how can we put these into practice from the research end? Increased competition, reduced disturbance, reduced soil nutrients. We don't know whether those are those are going to be tools, but they are really good to know about, that they do affect productivity of this plant. And lastly, biological control. What you've all been waiting for is good news, and this is directly from Dr. Patrick Moran. So big thanks to you for that. And knowing upfront, so we have we're going to give you an overview of what's available, what we know about so far, what they know about so far in terms of biological control. First, just know upfront, it's not an easy thing. An agent needs to have a narrow host range. Otherwise, it does more damage than good. It's best if the target plant is taxonomically isolated so that agent does not spread onto other things. You need to do testing, permitting, You need to introduce the agents, and maybe they have to be introduced multiple times. That takes years. And so we're looking at, potentially 5 years, maybe longer than that. The good news is there is a moth. It was found in the Mediterranean. It was known about before, of course. It feeds on stinkwort in Southern Europe. So stinkwort is also, I didn't really know this, it's taxonomically isolated. It's in the Inulae, which is what that strange oil, the essential oil was named after. And there are no native Inulae in California or even the US. I mean, it couldn't be any better than this. And no, it could be better, because in addition, the only closest relatives are other pests that we want to get rid of. So there's Ditrichia, false yellowhead, Ditrichia viscosa, which is a big EDRR species in California. There's also Pulicaria pallidosa, Spanish fleabane in Southern California, which we're going to add on to the Cal-IPC inventory this summer. So if it jumps to some other species, and it already is known to at least feed on the 2 Ditrichia, that's great. Have at it. All right. So the moth was collected in Greece for this purpose, for looking at it as a biocontrol agent in 21 through 2023. It does a pretty good job, 90% defoliation. It feeds on both Ditrichia species. They need to do a lot more host plant testing and get more information about the host range, biology, ecology, and so forth. Lastly here, a little bit about the data that Patrick has, along with his colleagues in Montpellier, France, collected. They have done a sampling of 50 sites in Europe, as well as, I think, in Europe and in South Africa, correct? As well as 25 sites in California. They have some of the microsatellite data so far. That limited amount of microsatellite data so far clusters out for California into 2 genetic clusters. You see that in the second graph. In the native range, or in the native and early introduced range, perhaps, there are distinct clusters of the genotypes. You see France and you see South Africa, and some probably in Europe, there's a fair amount of spread, but again, to be continued, probably, that story. So interesting initial results. The invasive origin is still unclear, but we're really looking forward to hearing an update on that. And it may be that populations in California have multiple origins. So in conclusion, the state funding should be available this year. If you are a potential candidate, look into it, look into whether Stinkwort might be applicable for getting that funding as a target for you. Use your existing networks and models, these collaborations. There's strength in numbers, there's strength in groups pulling together. Very important collaboration and communication about, where you're at with these populations, what's working, and getting at these repeatedly, these populations, is very important. And use the expertise that you have here, and let us wait to hear more from Patrick in the future. Thank you.